Captain Elias Vance stepped carefully onto the soft, glowing sands of Zarin Prime, a planet whose skies shimmered with colors he had never seen before. The twin suns cast streaks of pink and gold across the horizon, and the scent of alien flora drifted through the air, sweet and faintly metallic. He adjusted the straps of his exploration gear, his boots sinking slightly into the luminous surface. Despite years of space travel, the feeling of stepping onto a completely foreign world never grew old. The capital city stretched before him like a living mosaic of crystalline towers and floating platforms. Alien beings of every shape and size moved through the streets below, their forms elegant, strange, and terrifyingly beautiful. Elias had always known that humans were few and far between in these parts of the galaxy, but he had learned early on that rarity could be a form of influence. Where others might see vulnerability, humans often had the power of unpredictability, and unpredictability was a tool no one else possessed. Elias' mission on Zarin Prime was simple yet delicate. As a human envoy, he was there to observe, learn, and, if the opportunity arose, forge connections that could benefit Earth and her allies. Politics, however, were often a game of perception and patience. Humans were new to this corner of the galaxy, and first impressions mattered more than years of training. He had to walk lightly, speak carefully, and above all, stay aware. He moved toward the central market, a sprawling expanse of stalls suspended on hovering platforms, each glowing with colors that seemed to defy logic. Vendors called out in strange harmonics, offering everything from floating fruits to crystals that hummed when touched. The scent of roasted meats, though foreign, reminded him faintly of home. Elias' eyes scanned the crowd, noting the details that others might miss. A merchant whispering urgently to a guard, a child dodging between legs with uncanny agility, a group of aristocrats whose robes shimmered like liquid light. It was then that he saw her. At the far end of the market, a figure moved with the grace of someone born to command attention. Her skin shimmered with a faint iridescence, and her eyes were a deep violet that seemed to absorb and reflect the world around her. She wore a flowing garment of silver threads that danced in the sunlight, trailing behind her like liquid starlight. Elias paused mid-step, his curiosity piqued. She had caught his scent, or rather, something about him had sparked a memory in her mind. Her eyes widened, and for a moment she froze completely, as though time itself had stopped. People around her barely noticed, but Elias felt a ripple of tension in the air. He had learned to read small cues, and this was not ordinary caution or fear. It was recognition, but recognition of a kind that went deeper than appearances. Elias approached carefully, keeping his movements slow and non-threatening. "Princess Luria?" he asked softly, testing the waters. His voice was steady, though his pulse had quickened slightly. He had only heard tales of the Zarin princess, a figure both revered and protected. To see her in person was one thing, to have her react like this was something entirely different. The princess's gaze lingered on him, her expression a mixture of shock, confusion, and something that bordered on awe. She swallowed, her throat moving in a small, almost imperceptible gesture. Elias felt a surge of cautious hope. Whatever memory had been triggered, it was old and buried, yet still strong enough to reach across time and space. He continued carefully, keeping his hands visible. "I'm Elias Vance. I believe we have met before." He was here in this alien world, and yet he was standing before someone who remembered him from a moment long past, a moment that had mattered far more than he had ever imagined. Her voice was quiet, almost a whisper, yet it carried a power that made him pause. "You saved me." She had been a child, trapped in darkness and fear. He had been foolish, perhaps reckless, but determined. And somehow she remembered. Somehow she had carried that memory across years and light years. "Yes," he said simply, a smile touching his lips despite the tension. "I remember." Around them, life continued, but for Elias the moment stretched, heavy with meaning. He had traveled galaxies, faced dangers that could unmake him, and yet here he was, recognized not for his rank, not for his medals, but for an act of simple human courage. Elias stepped closer, careful to respect the invisible boundaries that her status imposed. "It's been many years," he said. "I never imagined I would see you again." Elias felt a quiet pride, not arrogance, but the deep, resonant pride of knowing that humans could leave an imprint even in worlds where they were strangers. They walked slowly through the market, careful to maintain distance, yet close enough for conversation. Elias learned that the princess had grown up under the strict protocols of her court, her every action observed, judged, and constrained. Yet even under such pressure, the memory of a human's courage had lingered, shaping her perception of what was possible. "You humans," she said finally with a small, almost shy laugh, "you take such risks for reasons I do not understand, and yet somehow you succeed. But when we see someone in danger, we act, we can't help it." That was enough. Most of my people, they would never have risked themselves for a child. But you did. Courage, kindness, they transcend species, don't they? It was more than a meeting. It was a reunion of memory and recognition, a quiet acknowledgement that even in a vast galaxy, human courage could leave an indelible mark. And for Elias, it was a reminder that no matter how far he traveled, no matter how strange or dangerous the worlds he encountered, humanity's defining trait, its willingness to act, to risk, to protect, was remembered, honored, and capable of bridging even the widest distances between stars. By the time the evening settled in and the market lights began to glow like captured starlight, Elias realized that this encounter was the start of something far greater than diplomacy or duty. It was the rekindling of a bond forged in courage, proof that human audacity could leave its mark across time and alien worlds. The princess glanced at him one last time before they parted ways, her eyes reflecting both memory and newfound respect. Elias knew that whatever challenges lay ahead on Zarin Prime, the memory of one human act of courage had set events into motion that would resonate far beyond this moment. And so, under alien skies that shimmered with endless possibility, Captain Elias Vance felt a quiet certainty settle in his chest. Humanity had arrived, not as conquerors or strangers, but as beings capable of leaving a legacy that even an alien princess could not forget. Princess Luria returned to the royal palace, her steps careful and measured on the polished crystalline floors. The memory of Elias' presence lingered in her mind, sharp and vivid, like a scent carried on the wind that refused to fade. She had thought herself immune to nostalgia, trained to focus on duty and protocol above all else, yet the human's arrival had stirred something deep within her. A mixture of recognition, gratitude, and an unfamiliar curiosity tugged at her thoughts, and she found herself unable to ignore it. Her advisors awaited her, their expressions polite yet expectant. They noticed a change in her demeanor immediately, though none could understand its source. Luria nodded to them quietly, aware of the rules that bound her. Even as a princess, she could not afford to show favoritism, especially toward a human. Yet the memory of the boy who had once saved her refused to be contained. She walked to her private chamber, a space filled with delicate alien architecture, light filtering through translucent walls in shifting patterns. She closed the door behind her and exhaled slowly, letting herself think freely for the first time in hours. The market, the scent, the voice, it all came rushing back. The memory of the cavern flooded her mind. She was no longer a princess in her memory, no longer bound by expectations or protocol. She was a frightened child, trapped under jagged rock, the air thick and choking. Her small hands had clawed at the stones, panic filling every fiber of her being. And then he had appeared, Elias. She had not seen many humans in her life, only diplomats and travelers who treated her as an exotic figure or a political token. But he had been different, brave, fearless, determined. He had climbed through the unstable rocks without hesitation, reaching her when everyone else had turned away. His hands had lifted her, steady and strong despite the danger, and his eyes had met hers with a calmness that had made her believe she would survive. It was strange, Luria realized, how memory could shape a person. That single act of courage had stayed with her for years, shaping her understanding of humans. She had believed them fragile, weak, and unpredictable, yet in that moment, he had been the opposite of all she expected. And now, seeing him again, older, stronger, yet unmistakably the same human, she felt the stirrings of trust and admiration. Meanwhile, Elias returned to the human delegation's quarters in the city. He could not stop thinking about the princess's reaction. The moment she had frozen, the recognition in her eyes had left him both puzzled and intrigued. Humans were known for leaving a mark wherever they went, for their courage and adaptability, but he had never imagined it would resonate so clearly across species. He reviewed the reports he had collected from the marketplace, noting the political dynamics and subtle tensions. Yet his mind kept wandering back to the princess, to her violet eyes and the quiet strength he had glimpsed in her expression. He felt a sense of connection, though he could not yet name it. The next day, Elias requested permission to visit the palace under official guise. The council hesitated, wary of human proximity to royal matters, but the princess's name had surfaced in his request, and curiosity won over protocol. They allowed it, though they assigned a small contingent of guards to observe from a distance. When Elias arrived, the princess was waiting in a private garden, a serene space of glowing plants and softly singing fountains. The air was filled with fragrances that seemed to encourage calm and reflection. Lurya's eyes met his immediately, and for a brief moment the world outside the garden seemed to disappear. "Princess Lurya," Elias said with a respectful bow, "I hope I am not intruding." Privately, she needed to understand how the human had survived so many challenges and why he had risked himself for her all those years ago. "I remember," she said finally, her words hesitant. "The day you saved me. I have never forgotten it. Even now, I cannot understand why you did not hesitate, why you acted without fear. Sometimes, when someone is in danger, you do what you can. Fear is natural, but it does not have to stop action. Humans, we have a tendency to act, even when the odds seem impossible." That combination, the courage tempered by thoughtfulness, was rare, and it made her realize why she had remembered him so vividly. He had embodied the qualities of humanity at its best, brave, adaptable, and selfless. "You remind me," she said quietly, "that humans are capable of more than we often give them credit for. You risked your life, and yet you did not hesitate. Most of my people would have turned away." The princess felt a strange comfort in Elias' presence. In a world where every movement and word was measured, controlled, and observed, here was a human whose intentions were clear, whose bravery was unquestionable. For hours, they spoke quietly, sharing stories of their lives since that day. Elias recounted tales of human exploration, of narrow escapes and unexpected alliances, of worlds both beautiful and dangerous. Lurya listened intently, her mind expanding with every word. Humans were fragile compared to her people, yet they had survived, thrived, and left their mark across countless stars. Their audacity, resourcefulness, and determination fascinated her. As the conversation turned to politics, Lurya revealed her concerns. There were factions in her court who opposed alliances with humans, who saw them as unpredictable and untrustworthy. She had felt trapped between her duty and the memory of the human who had once saved her. Elias listened carefully, nodding with understanding. "Your people fear what they do not understand," he said gently. "Humans may seem fragile, but our strength is not in physical power alone. It is in our courage, our ability to think differently, and our willingness to act when it matters most." She realized that humans, though small and seemingly delicate, could influence the course of events in ways that even the most powerful alien species could not anticipate. As the sun dipped below the horizon, casting the sky in deep shades of violet and orange, they continued their conversation. The garden glowed softly around them, and the weight of protocol seemed to fade, leaving only the bond forged by shared history and mutual respect. I do not know what to do," Lurya admitted, her voice barely above a whisper. "My people expect me to follow tradition to distance myself from humans, yet I cannot forget you or what you did for me. I feel conflicted." In that moment, she understood that humans were not just survivors. They were creators, innovators, and partners in ways her people had yet to fully appreciate. The garden fell silent for a while, the air filled only with the soft hum of alien flora and the distant songs of the city beyond the palace walls. Lurya's mind raced with possibilities. Could she bridge the gap between her people and humans? Could she honor her duty while acknowledging the truth she had long felt in her heart, that humans were capable of greatness beyond imagination? Elias broke the silence. "We do not have to face this alone, Princess. Humans have survived against impossible odds, and we thrive because we work together, think creatively, and act with courage. Perhaps it is time your people saw that for themselves." As night settled over Zarin Prime, the garden glowing with bioluminescent light, the bond between human and princess deepened. It was more than recognition. It was an alliance of understanding, a shared belief in the power of courage and action. Elias stayed until the palace guards signaled that it was time to return. They parted with a quiet promise to meet again, each aware that the future held challenges, uncertainties, and dangers, but also opportunities to prove that humans, though small and fragile in appearance, could make an impact that resonated across stars. As he walked back to his quarters, Elias reflected on the day's events. He had come to Zarin Prime expecting diplomacy, observation, and perhaps minor negotiations. Instead, he had rediscovered a bond formed in courage, witnessed the memory of a human act shaping alien perception, and realized that humanity's defining traits, bravery, adaptability, and ingenuity, could leave a mark even in the farthest reaches of the galaxy. For Princess Luria, the encounter had awakened a new understanding. Humans were not merely visitors in her world. They were partners, allies, and a testament to the audacity that could shape civilizations. And she, a princess bound by tradition, would have to decide how to honor that truth without abandoning her responsibilities. As the night deepened, both human and alien stared at the stars above, the same stars that had once watched them struggle and survive. The memory of courage, of life saved against impossible odds, lingered between them like a silent promise. The story was far from over, but for the first time in years, both felt the certainty that humanity, in all its stubborn brilliance, had a place among the stars. The following morning, Zarin Prime shimmered under twin suns that painted the city in brilliant shades of pink and gold. The markets were alive with energy, traders calling out to passers-by, and the air was filled with scents of strange fruits, spices, and faint ozone from hovering vehicles. Yet beneath the vibrancy of the city, tension simmered. The royal court had begun to notice Princess Luria's unusual behavior. She moved with a distracted grace, her thoughts lingering on Elias Vance, the human who had once saved her life. Luria knew that showing any favoritism toward a human could provoke suspicion, even hostility. Her advisors whispered in corridors and council chambers, discussing what the princess's fascination with a human might mean. Some saw it as a dangerous distraction, others feared it might weaken her authority. And yet, the memory of Elias' courage, the way he had acted without fear, refused to fade. It had become a quiet but powerful reminder that humans, though small and fragile in appearance, possessed a strength of spirit that could not be measured in weapons or armies. Elias, meanwhile, moved carefully through the streets, observing the subtle currents of alien life. He had learned over years of exploration that intelligence was not always obvious, and that the smallest gestures could reveal the deepest truths. Today, he was testing those truths. He wanted to understand the political climate, the fears, and the ambitions of those around him. Humans often had to navigate alien worlds with caution, but they had a way of turning even limited opportunities into advantage. He made his way to the palace under the pretext of routine diplomatic duties, but in truth, he was curious. He needed to gauge how Luria's people might react to the growing attention she paid to him. The corridors of the palace were quiet, servants and guards moving with precision, as though every footstep carried weight. It was a world structured around discipline, observation, and subtle influence, but Elias had learned to read such environments like a map. Luria waited for him in a sunlit atrium filled with floating plants and softly glowing stones. The air smelled faintly sweet, with hints of alien nectar that seemed to encourage calm and reflection. She greeted him with a measured nod, careful not to let her emotions show too clearly. Elias, in turn, offered a polite smile, recognizing the delicate balance she maintained. "You return quickly," she said, her voice steady. "Do you come for duty or curiosity?" "And perhaps a little for conversation. I wish to understand your people better, Princess. They are complex, and humans, we often thrive in complexity. Even in my court, people speak with caution, yet you seem to understand more than they intend." The memory of the cavern surged unbidden, reminding her of the day he had climbed through danger without hesitation. She realized that human courage was not a reckless impulse. It was a calculated, persistent willingness to act, even when the outcome was uncertain. That was a quality that could not be taught. It was inherent, a part of the human spirit. Their conversation was interrupted by the distant sounds of a council session convening. Luria tensed, knowing that any discussion about her attention toward a human could spark questions. Elias noticed the shift immediately, his instincts alert to subtle changes in posture and expression. He reached out slightly, a reassuring gesture, though careful not to overstep. "You do not need to face them alone," he said quietly. "Humans often act as allies, not only in survival but in guidance. Perhaps there is a way for us to show them what humans can achieve without undermining your authority." Yet she knew that human ingenuity, Elias' ingenuity, was something her people might not immediately appreciate, but could benefit from if shown carefully. It was a delicate balance. She needed to protect her position while honoring the memory and potential of a human who had once saved her life. Later that day, news arrived of an approaching threat. Scouts reported that a neighboring faction, the Dravari, had mobilized near the borders of Zarin Prime. They were known for aggression, territorial ambition, and advanced technology. Their movements were deliberate, signaling not mere exploration but preparation for conflict. Luria's advisors reacted with urgency, debating strategies, defenses, and diplomatic options. Fear mixed with tension as each suggestion was weighed against tradition and protocol. Elias watched the proceedings with quiet calculation. Where the Zarin relied heavily on tradition and hierarchy, he saw gaps, opportunities for human initiative. He spoke with Luria privately, sharing ideas not just about defense, but about strategy that combined human creativity with Zarin technology. "Your people are strong," he said, "but sometimes predictable. The Dravari may anticipate certain moves. We can use that. Humans think differently. We see patterns and possibilities that others miss. It may give us an advantage." She had long admired human ingenuity, but seeing it applied to real-world stakes, a potential threat to her people, was compelling. "Show me," she said, a hint of excitement in her voice. "Show me what you mean." It relied on small, precise actions that could disrupt the Dravari's expectations. Tactical diversions, the use of environmental advantages, and careful coordination with Zarin forces. He explained each step calmly, emphasizing timing, adaptability, and the need for trust between all participants. Luria listened closely, noting how different human thinking was. Where her advisors had focused on protocol and brute strength, Elias focused on flexibility, observation, and innovation. His approach reminded her of the day he had saved her, the courage to act combined with careful thought. It was a philosophy that valued intellect as much as bravery, a combination that made humans uniquely capable. The next morning, the Dravari advanced toward Zarin territory. The palace was alive with tension, guards moving swiftly, and advisors calling out instructions. Luria and Elias stood together in the command chamber, overseeing preparations. The humans' proposed tactics were implemented alongside Zarin forces, each step calculated and executed with precision. As the first Dravari scouts approached, they were met with unexpected obstacles. Terrain traps subtly deployed, misleading signals, and rapid responses that confused their formation. Elias watched as his strategy unfolded, seeing both success and minor setbacks. Each setback was met with immediate adjustment, a hallmark of human adaptability. Luria observed closely, impressed by the efficiency and ingenuity. Her advisors were cautious, some skeptical, but the results could not be denied. Humans, through ingenuity and courage, had shifted the dynamics of the battlefield without direct confrontation. It was a quiet, powerful victory, demonstrating that size and strength were not the only measures of influence or capability. By midday, the Dravari had withdrawn to reassess. Their leaders, frustrated and baffled by the unexpected tactics, realized that they had underestimated the coordination between Zarin forces and human ingenuity. The palace erupted in muted relief, a mix of astonishment and admiration for the human contributions. Luria turned to Elias, her expression a mixture of pride and respect. "You have proven something today," she said softly. "Not only to me but to everyone watching. Humans, they are more capable than many of my people realize. Courage, creativity, and teamwork, these are human strengths that are not always visible, but they are real." And now, seeing humans in action, she understood that their potential extended far beyond any single act. They could influence, protect, and innovate in ways her people had yet to fully comprehend. That evening, as the sun set and the city glowed with soft bioluminescence, Luria and Elias walked through the palace gardens once more. The events of the day had changed something fundamental. Trust had been established, not through force or rank, but through action, ingenuity, and shared purpose. "You have shown me a new way of thinking," Luria admitted quietly. "A way that blends courage with intelligence, action with reflection. I think my people will benefit from this if they are willing to listen. Humans have survived because we adapt, learn, and act when needed. It is not about dominating, but about understanding possibilities and seizing them. Your people have strengths, and when combined with human insight, the results can be extraordinary. There is much to learn from one another." She had not only rediscovered a human from her past, but had witnessed humanity in action, courageous, clever, and resilient. The memory of a single act had led to strategy, alliance, and a subtle shift in power. And for Elias, the encounter reinforced a truth he had always known. Humans were small in size, yet vast in potential. Their audacity, intellect, and courage left marks that could transcend time, species, and planets. Today, Zarin Prime had felt the ripple of that human spirit, and the princess who had once been a child saved from danger now stood as a witness to the enduring legacy of human ingenuity. As they parted for the night, both understood that the days ahead would bring challenges far greater than the ones faced today. Yet, there was confidence in knowing that human creativity, combined with the princess's leadership, could turn uncertainty into opportunity. The galaxy was vast, threats were real, and traditions were deeply rooted. But in the quiet moments, in choices guided by courage and cleverness, humans had shown that even the smallest act of bravery could change the course of events. The memory of the past, the wisdom of action, and the audacity to face challenges together had forged a partnership that promised to shape the future in ways that neither species could yet fully imagine. The days following the Dravari withdrawal were filled with preparation and cautious optimism. Zarin Prime's streets buzzed with activity as engineers, guards, and diplomats moved to reinforce defenses, refine strategies, and strengthen alliances. The palace, usually a place of serene order, hummed with purpose. Princess Luria and Elias Vance worked closely, their conversations now more frequent and detailed. The bond that had begun as memory and recognition had grown into trust and collaboration. Yet the calm was deceptive. The Dravari were not a people who abandoned ambitions lightly. Scouts and informants brought news of a larger fleet gathering on the far side of the system, their numbers and intent far more formidable than before. This was no longer a minor incursion or a simple test of boundaries. It was a potential invasion. Luria's advisors argued late into the night, debating options, while the princess herself weighed the risks with a clarity born of necessity. Elias observed quietly, noting the patterns of argument, the hesitation masked by tradition, and the fear hidden beneath protocol. Humans thrived in uncertainty, and he knew that the key to turning the situation in their favor lay in combining human adaptability with Zarin's strengths. "Predictability is the enemy of defense," he said softly to Luria as they reviewed reports together. "They expect your moves, your thinking, but humans act differently. We see possibilities others overlook. If the outcome benefits everyone, people will follow naturally." Every step required precise coordination, subtle timing, and trust in those executing the plan. Luria was amazed at how naturally Elia's suggestions meshed with her people's advanced technology. It was a union of creativity and precision, courage and calculation. The first sign of the Dravari fleet arrived at the edge of the system 2 days later. Sensors detected dozens of ships moving with intent, engines leaving trails of blue energy in the vacuum. Alarm sirens sounded across the city, and the council convened immediately. Luria stood at the center, her posture steady, her mind focused. Elias was at her side, reviewing the movements on the holomap, calculating potential responses. The Dravari commanders expected a predictable defense, something rigid and formal. But the Zarin, guided by Elias' insights, responded in ways that disrupted those expectations. Intermittent energy barriers blocked predictable paths, sensor jammers created false targets, and small squads moved with unpredictable precision. It was a battle of wits, a clash of strategy rather than brute force. Luria watched with a mix of pride and fascination. Her people's skill was formidable, yet combined with Elias' insight, the results were extraordinary. The Dravari fleet faltered, struggling to anticipate moves, unable to predict the human element influencing their outcomes. Every tactical choice reflected human creativity, the willingness to act boldly, adjust quickly, and seize opportunity when it appeared. Midway through the confrontation, one of the Dravari's flagship ships attempted a direct strike on a vital energy conduit supplying the palace's defenses. The council reacted with alarm, but Elias had anticipated such a move. "We've prepared for this," he said calmly. "Send the diversionary squad through the southern approach. They will create a temporary opening that draws the flagship away from the main conduit." The flagship followed the bait, leaving the vital conduit intact, while the Zarin forces repositioned to exploit the fleet's disarray. The palace remained safe, and the Dravari fleet's confidence began to crumble. Throughout the operation, Luria felt a quiet admiration for Elias, not just for his courage, but for his clarity of thought under pressure. Humans had a way of remaining calm, assessing options, and taking decisive action even when stakes were high. It was a lesson in audacity and adaptability, a reminder of why the memory of a single human act had lingered in her mind for so many years. As the battle continued, Elias coordinated small teams, using rapid communication and observation to outmaneuver the Dravari. He relied not on overwhelming force, but on clever diversions, terrain advantages, and the trust he had built with Luria's people. Each successful maneuver bolstered confidence, proving that humans could not only survive in alien worlds, but also influence events in ways that even advanced civilizations did not anticipate. By the end of the day, the Dravari fleet had been forced to retreat. Their commanders, frustrated and humiliated, withdrew to reassess, leaving Zarin Prime intact. The city erupted in cautious celebration, guards and citizens alike recognizing the success without fully understanding the human contributions behind it. Luria turned to Elias, her expression one of gratitude and newfound respect. "You have done something remarkable," she said quietly. "Not just today, but in every step leading here. You have shown me, and perhaps my people, the value of courage, adaptability, and insight. Humans, they are extraordinary in ways I did not fully understand. We are extraordinary because we try, because we act when it matters, because we learn from each challenge. That is what matters." Memory and action, courage and creativity, they were the hallmarks of human influence, a lesson that would shape her decisions for years to come. In the days following the Dravari retreat, the Palace Council began to recognize Elias' value. His insights, actions, and calm leadership had saved the city without a single direct confrontation. Skepticism remained among some factions, but others were openly curious, eager to understand how humans achieved what their advanced technology alone could not. Luria watched with quiet satisfaction as her people began to see humans differently, not as fragile outsiders, but as capable, intelligent, and courageous allies. Even as the city celebrated, new challenges emerged. Supplies needed reinforcement, communication lines required security, and rumors of other factions observing the events spread through the galaxy. Luria knew that vigilance was necessary, that human ingenuity would continue to be a vital asset in navigating the complexities ahead. Elias, for his part, remained steady. He continued to teach, guide, and collaborate, showing that humans could contribute far beyond physical strength. The combination of memory, courage, and adaptability had proven powerful, and he knew that the lessons of this encounter would resonate across generations. One evening, as the twin suns set, casting long shadows over the palace gardens, Luria and Elias walked together. The air was calm, fragrant with alien blooms, and the city glimmered below them. She spoke first, her voice quiet yet filled with resolve. "You have changed my understanding of what is possible. Humans are not just visitors, they are partners, allies, and a reminder that courage can shape events in ways we do not always anticipate. That is all any human hopes for, to make a difference where it matters, and to inspire others to act, even when the path is uncertain. The universe is vast, and humans have shown me that audacity, ingenuity, and courage are forces as powerful as any weapon." Humans had arrived on Zarin Prime not as conquerors, not as strangers, but as a force defined by their will to act, their clarity of thought, and their determination to make a difference. As night fell, the palace gardens glowed with a soft bioluminescent light, reflecting in the fountains and crystalline walls. Luria realized that the future would bring further challenges, threats, and uncertainties, but also opportunities to demonstrate that humans, though small in appearance, possessed a strength that could leave a lasting mark on alien civilizations. The memory of the past, the lessons of courage, and the wisdom of action had combined to create something remarkable. Today, Zarin Prime had witnessed humanity's unique power, the ability to inspire, protect, and innovate. And as the stars above shimmered in silent witness, both princess and human knew that their partnership was only the beginning. Elias turned to leave, pausing to glance back at Luria. "We will face whatever comes next together," he said. "Humans do not retreat from challenges. We act, we adapt, and we persevere." Humanity had proven that courage, intelligence, and ingenuity could bridge worlds, influence outcomes, and leave an indelible mark. The partnership of human and princess was a living testament to that truth, a story of memory, bravery, and the power of acting when it mattered most. As the palace settled into silence and the stars glimmered above, both knew that the coming days would test them further. Yet the memory of past courage, The success of human ingenuity and the trust between species provided a foundation strong enough to face any challenge. The universe was vast, the threats real, but humanity's defining traits, adaptability, creativity, and audacity, had left a mark that could never be erased. And so, under alien skies that seemed impossibly wide, Captain Elias Vance and Princess Luria prepared for the next stage of their journey, ready to face the future with courage, strategy, and a bond forged across memory, space, and action. The final days before the summit were filled with quiet intensity. Zarin Prime prepared to receive representatives from many neighboring systems, including allies, rivals, and observers who wished to judge the strength of the planet after the recent conflicts. The Dravari had retreated, but their shadow still lingered in every discussion. Princess Luria understood that this gathering would decide more than treaties. It would decide how her people viewed humanity and how the galaxy would remember the choices made on Zarin Prime. Elias Vance spent those days working alongside engineers, diplomats, and planners. He did not demand attention, nor did he seek praise. That was not the human way he believed in. Instead, he listened, observed, and offered help when needed. Humans had survived Earth's harsh history not by dominance alone, but by cooperation and adaptation. He carried that lesson with him as he walked through alien halls filled with glowing symbols and soft echoes. Luria often watched him from a distance. She remembered the frightened child she had been, trapped in darkness, and the human who had reached out without hesitation. Now she saw the same courage, refined by experience and guided by wisdom. Elias had not only defended her world, he had shown her people a new way to think. That alone made the upcoming summit both promising and dangerous. On the day of the summit, the palace was alive with energy. Delegates from distant worlds arrived in ships of every shape and size, their colors and designs filling the skies above the city. The grand hall glowed with layered light, walls shifting hues to reflect the presence of each species. Luria stood at the center, calm and composed, her posture reflecting strength and confidence. Elias stood a short distance behind her, not as a ruler, but as an ally. The discussions began with formal greetings and cautious words. Some delegates praised Zarin Prime's resilience. Others questioned how such a traditionally structured world had repelled a powerful faction like the Dravari without major losses. The unspoken question hung heavy in the air. What role had the human played? Eventually, one delegate spoke openly. They were tall, with smooth metallic skin and eyes that glowed faintly. "We have observed unusual patterns in your recent defense," they said. "They do not match known Zarin strategies. We wish to understand this change." She could hide the truth behind diplomacy, or she could face it openly. She glanced briefly at Elias. He met her gaze with calm trust, saying nothing, asking for nothing. Luria stepped forward. "The change you observed is real," she said. "It came from cooperation, from learning, from understanding that strength does not always follow tradition." She continued, her voice steady. "A human helped us, not by force but by insight, by courage, by showing us how to adapt when facing the unexpected." One delegate asked, "And you trust this human?" Elias spoke when invited, answering questions simply and honestly. He explained human thinking in clear terms. Humans observed patterns, prepared for failure, and adjusted quickly. They did not assume perfection. They planned for mistakes and learned from them. That was how they survived. Some delegates listened with growing interest. Others challenged him, questioning whether such unpredictability was dangerous. Elias accepted the concerns calmly. "Unpredictability can be dangerous," he said, "but it can also save lives. Humans do not seek chaos, we seek solutions." A long-range signal indicated movement from another aggressive faction, one that had been watching silently. They were not attacking, but they were approaching, curious and cautious. The room filled with tension once more. Eyes turned to Luria, to Elias. Luria felt fear, but it did not control her. She had learned that fear did not have to stop action. She spoke clearly. "This is the moment we choose what kind of future we want. We can hide behind fear, or we can show unity." A unified signal was prepared, not aggressive but firm. It showed shared defenses, shared knowledge, and shared resolve. It showed that Zarin Prime was no longer standing alone. The approaching faction paused, their ship slowed. Then, after long moments of silence, they altered course, choosing observation over confrontation. The message had been received. Relief washed through the hall. The danger had passed, not through force, but through unity and understanding. Luria felt a deep sense of certainty settle in her heart. This was the future she wanted for her people. In the days that followed, agreements were signed, trade routes opened, defensive cooperation was established. Humans were formally recognized as trusted allies of Zarin Prime. It was a historic moment, one that would echo across the stars. Elias stood quietly as the announcement was made. He did not seek applause, though it was offered. He thought of Earth, of humanity's long struggle to survive and grow. This alliance was not just a victory for Zarin Prime. It was a testament to what humans could be when given a chance. Later, as the celebrations faded and the palace grew quiet, Luria and Elias walked once more through the gardens. The air was calm, filled with soft light and gentle sounds. The stars above seemed closer than ever. "You have changed my world," Luria said softly. Elias shook his head. "You changed it too. You chose trust. That is never easy. I once thought courage was rare. Now I see it can be learned, shared, and remembered." Soon, Elias would return to his people, carrying stories of a world that had learned to see humans differently. Luria would continue to lead, guided by memory and strengthened by alliance. Their paths would diverge, but their bond would remain. As dawn approached, painting the sky with soft color, Luria spoke one last time. "The galaxy will remember this day. And humanity will remember that we were trusted." And somewhere among the stars, the story of a human who once saved a frightened child had grown into something far greater. A reminder that even in a vast and uncertain universe, the human spirit could still inspire, protect, and unite.